Ending the war in Afghanistan is considered to be a coveted event that any American president would love to have as part of their legacy. Both Republican and Democrat presidents have made considerable efforts to be the president that ends the war in Afghanistan and brings U.S. troops home. The 2021 withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan, and who would get the credit for it, was doomed to be a tug-of-war between the two political parties. Nancy Pelosi has a deep resentment of Donald Trump beyond the typical norms of opposing political views. She wanted the legacy to belong to a Democrat president certainly, but the thought of Donald Trump getting credit for bringing the troops home was too much. Let's look back in time to see exactly how America ended up rushing out of Afghanistan in August of 21, leaving weapons, vehicles, and even American citizens behind in the process.
What I had said was that really it's time. We've been there 9.5, almost 10 years. For the first 7.5 years, the Bush administration did nothing. They had no plan. President Obama has a plan. He has announced the good news that we will be gone by a date certain. I had hoped that they could take more troops out sooner for a number of reasons. The lives and limbs of our precious treasure, first and foremost, the cost to the taxpayer, but also the message to the Afghan people, the Afghan government, that they have to do their part of this, and the sooner the better, and the sooner they do, the sooner our troops will come home.
America's combat mission will be over by the end of this year. Starting next year, Afghans will be fully responsible for securing their country.
We are leaving in 2014, period. And in the process, we're going to be saving over the next 10 years another $800 billion. We've been in this war for over a decade. The primary objective is almost completed. Now all we're doing is putting the Kabul government in a position to be able to maintain their own security. It's their responsibility, not America's.
But what any administration will do in 2013 is assess the situation to see how best to complete this timeline. What we do not want to do
in 2014.
What we do not want to do.
President Obama came into office pledging to end America's military combat role in Afghanistan. However, towards the end of his second term, he announced that there would be around 8,400 American troops still in Afghanistan when he leaves office. Months prior to the end of Obama's second term, Nancy Pelosi shifted her focus to Hillary Clinton. The Princeton Election Consortium found that Hillary Clinton had a highly probable win for the next presidential bid with 312 electoral votes across the country and only 270 were needed. It appeared that Pelosi would get another opportunity to assure that a Democrat president would bring the American troops home and be credited with ending the war in Afghanistan. Until Tuesday, November 8, 2016, that is. Donald Trump's surprise win over Hillary Clinton was devastating to Pelosi's vision, as she was hoping for two wins at once, bringing in the first female president and the assurance that the legacy event of bringing American troops home from Afghanistan would go to a Democrat president. When Trump was elected, Pelosi made a statement that his winning was having an actual physical impact on her. She said it was like being kicked in the back by a mule. Pelosi became obsessed with removing Donald Trump no matter the cost. She adopted the strategy of discredit, charge, and impeach. Fellow House Democrats piled on, and an unofficial four-year campaign to unseat a sitting president was set into play. Donald Trump was to be character assassinated. He was to be portrayed as a racist, a misogynist, a narcissist, or even a criminal during any interviews or public discussions with the mainstream media. It became a party obsession for the Democrats to make with certainty that Donald Trump would not get re-elected in 2020.
None of us thought Hillary would win. We all knew she would win. We knew she would win. This was, oh my gosh, that was really shocking that somebody like Donald Trump could be president of the United States. Oh my gosh.
Every day he demonstrates that he should not be president of the United States. Nobody knows better than Donald Trump
then he should not be president of the United States.
Well, we can impeach him every day of the week for anything he does.
I don't respect this president, and I will fight every day until he is impeached.
I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America.
I continue to say, impeach him!
On the impeachment, Donald Trump, would you vote yes or no?
I would vote yes.
I would vote to impeach.
Because we're gonna go in there, we're gonna impeach the mother.
If we don't impeach this president, he will get reelected.
After many months of character attacks and accusations that Trump was a racist and a closet white supremacist, the mainstream media learned that running stories that were, in simple form, anti-Trump was great for ratings. 2020 also brought COVID-19, yet another weapon to be used in Pelosi's arsenal. After all, it was Barack Obama's White House Chief of Staff, Rahm Emanuel, that said you never let a serious crisis go to waste. As Pelosi and the Democrat Party turned up the rhetoric on racism in their quest to create mayhem, the mainstream media began the Trump is responsible campaign regarding COVID-19. Starting aggressively in early 2020 and determined to go 24/7 until the next election, the Democrat Party and the mainstream media worked in lockstep to lock down cities, create civil unrest, and blame Trump. In the meantime, Joe Biden was being groomed by Pelosi for the Democratic Party primary nomination.
As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know. I don't know what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. They can say anything. It makes me sad.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history.
If you look at what we've done, I closed it and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist and he's xenophobic because you didn't think I should have closed our country. Wait a minute.
It says 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. We got the gowns, we got the masks, we made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press, they give me bad press, because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
His own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up, he said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't.
In one of the most heated elections in modern history, Joe Biden was declared the victor. The results were highly contested as allegations of voter fraud was the main topic on main streets all over America. The mainstream media and most all social media platforms were busy deflecting and suppressing any voices that would insinuate Biden's win was questionable. In fact, media was instructed to run stories that Biden was the most popular win ever. Joe Biden was elected as the oldest president to ever be elected in American history, and many conservative voices have expressed that the Biden win was less a win and more of an inserting of a selected figurehead by the real powers within the Democrat Party. It's said that Biden was instructed to remain off the grid at home for the majority of his campaign, as he was to inherit the role of president for his time in service to the party, even though his cognitive health was in question. The theory is that Joe Biden was to be chosen and to be handed the role of president. In his role, he was to follow the instructions and guidance of Pelosi. He would be instructed what to say and what agenda to pursue. In the arrangement, he was assured that he would leave behind a presidential legacy that would surpass even that of his former boss, President Obama.
So I am so officially pleased with the outcome that is imminent, and also personally delighted because of the quality and caliber of leadership that Joe Biden will provide. This morning it is clear that the Biden-Harris ticket will win the White House. His election is historic, propelled by the biggest vote ever in the history of our country, 73.8 million and counting Americans, the most votes ever received by any presidential ticket in history. President-elect Biden has a strong mandate to lead, and it will have a strong Democratic House with him, and many Democrats in the Senate.
Then when I inherited the job. I'm happy to take questions if that's what I'm supposed to do, Nance, whatever you want me to do.
You guys are bad. I'm not supposed to be answering all these questions. I'm supposed to leave. I'm sorry. This is the last question I'll take, and I'm really going to be in trouble. They gave me a list here. The first person I was instructed to call on was Kelly O'Donnell of NBC. I'm not supposed to take any questions, but go ahead.
Mr. President, on Afghanistan.
I'm not going to answer.
Biden came into his position with Nancy Pelosi's pen in hand and began signing executive orders by the dozen. From ending American energy independence by halting the Keystone Pipeline to freezing all foreign policies in place by his predecessor Donald Trump. An important note here is that prior to Biden's official win, Pelosi and 9 senior members of Congress made an unannounced visit to Afghanistan on October 21, as reported in the quarterly SIGA reports of Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction. John Supko is Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction appointed to the post by President Obama. Pelosi has made such visits 9 times in all. In hindsight, it appears to be preparation needed for the reports that Biden would use as an official reason for ending Trump's Taliban deal. Pelosi's relations with Trump at the time were at their lowest point as she was currently leading an impeachment inquiry against him. Commenting on her visit to Afghanistan, she said, "We will return to Washington strengthened with the facts and the first-hand knowledge we have gathered at this critical time for our nation's Afghanistan policy, and we are inspired by the courage of our service members and diplomats on the front lines." The information in a recent SIGA review was used as reason for freezing the withdrawals that Trump had in place and then going to work on a way to have it so Biden could claim the legacy event. During the freeze under the Biden administration's global review, the American troops lost 3 months of time that could have been used to peacefully evacuate all weapons, equipment, and citizens as it was originally scheduled. Then on April 4, 2021, Biden announced his plan to change the withdrawal dates and claimed it was due to lack of options.
I've concluded that it's time to end America's longest war. It's time for American troops to come home. When I came to office, I inherited a diplomatic agreement duly negotiated between the government of the United States and the Taliban that all U.S. forces would be out of Afghanistan by May 1, 2021, just 3 months after my inauguration. That's what we inherited, that commitment. It's perhaps not what I would have negotiated myself, but it was an agreement made by the United States government, and that means something. So in keeping with that agreement and with our national interest, the United States will begin our final withdrawal, begin it on May 1 of this year. We'll not conduct a hasty rush to the exit. We'll do it responsibly, deliberately, and safely. And we will do it in full coordination with our allies and partners, who now have more forces in Afghanistan than we do. And the Taliban should know that if they attack us as we draw down, we will defend ourselves and our partners with all the tools at our disposal. Our allies and partners have stood beside us, shoulder to shoulder in Afghanistan for almost 20 years, and we're deeply grateful for the contributions they have made to our shared mission and for the sacrifices they've borne. The plan has long been in together, out together. U.S. troops, as well as forces deployed by our NATO allies and operational partners, will be out of Afghanistan before we mark the 20th anniversary of that heinous attack on September 11th.
During the delay of withdrawals when Biden came into office, there were over 3 months of backroom talks about the Trump-Taliban deal. Option 1 was to honor the Trump deal and continue withdrawals of troops and all military equipment by May 1st, but the result would have given Trump the credit for bringing the troops home and ending the war in Afghanistan. At the time that Biden entered office, the Afghanistan government and the Taliban each controlled their respective territories, neither were mounting major offensives, and America had only 2,500 troops in the country, which was the smallest military presence since the war began in 2001. It's important to note that the United States had not suffered a single combat casualty in 18 months, which was part of the Trump deal. So why not continue as planned? Because Donald Trump would have been given the credit, that's why. Pelosi would not have Trump getting credit for such a legacy event for president. Option 2 was to come to grips with the fact that Trump had made commitments with the Taliban but left no room for reversing or cancelling the deal, so any attempt to cancel it would have most certainly enraged the Taliban. This option would have forced American soldiers back into an active war once again as the Taliban closed in on the remaining 2,500 troops. Biden would have been directly to blame for cancelling the deal and reigniting a war. Option 3, or the Pelosi option, was to now publicly announce that America would honor the commitment Trump had made, but change the terms at the same time. Realizing that they had already lost 3 months of time with their freeze on Trump's plan, they were to stall the exit for more time and change the withdrawal date to provide Biden with the best presidential optics by scheduling the final withdrawal date during the 9/11 anniversary. But how would the Taliban respond to Biden's intentional breaking Trump's deal? What was the message to Biden regarding his plan to make the withdrawal his own, and use the 9/11 anniversary as optics to celebrate himself in the process?
Joe Biden has just been elected. Do you think that could potentially change the situation?
د جو بایدن لپاره د موږ مشوران دا ده چې د ټرمپ تګلاره خپله کو خپل عسکر وباسي د ملک نه نور د نه ځان خوږوي نه د خپل ملک اقتصاد خرابوي چې هغه بله چاره هم نه لري. د موږ خبر هم ورته همدا دی، اخطار هم همدا دی. که دا جنگ زیاتوي نو موږ د جنگ او د جهاد لپاره بالکل آماده یو. موږ په جهاد باندې نه ستړي کیږو، په زخمو باندې نه غمجن کیږو، په شهادت باندې نه دردیږو. موږ که شهیدان شوم کامیاب یو، که په ستړي وم کامیاب یو، که په جنگ کې وم کامیاب وو. موږ په فاتحانه توګه کابل ته انشاءالله ننوځو. دا د موږ لاره او کامیابي ده.
The risk involved with the Pelosi plan was obvious. Military advisors predicted the Taliban would move forward in taking specific regions aggressively following the original Trump withdrawal date of May 1st. However, Biden and Pelosi were assured that the Afghanistan army should be able to hold the Taliban back successfully through the end of 2021. By choosing to change the withdrawal date for the best optics and to assure that Biden could claim the withdrawal as his own, it had to be understood that the plan would increase the risk to American lives if the Afghanistan army failed to hold their ground. Another thing to consider would be how to assure the safety and freedom of the women and young girls in Afghanistan, as the original Trump deal included conditions for such.
The Taliban have launched a huge offensive in Afghanistan after a missed US deadline to withdraw troops. Since Monday, Afghan security forces fought back an offensive in southern Helmand province. Although the US did not meet the May 1st withdrawal deadline agreed in talks with the Taliban last year, its pullout has begun, with President Joe Biden announcing all troops will be out by September 11th. Critics of the decision to withdraw say the militants will try to sweep back into power. The head of Helmand's provincial council says the Taliban had launched their huge offensive on Monday from multiple directions, attacking and seizing checkpoints. Afghan security forces returned with airstrikes and deployed elite commando forces to the area. The insurgents have been pushed back, but fighting continued on Tuesday, displacing hundreds of families. The Afghan Defense Ministry says that security forces are also responding to attacks by the Taliban in at least 6 other provinces in the past 24 hours.
These pictures from Kunduz in northern Afghanistan, where the provincial capital Kunduz city looks at risk of being surrounded. Special Representative Lyons said the UN believes this may be a deliberate strategy.
More than 50 of Afghanistan's 370 districts have fallen since the beginning of May.
In the meantime, Pelosi requested that President Ashraf Ghani makes a visit to Washington. Urgent talks necessary June 25, 2021. Nancy Pelosi once again had talks with President Ashraf Ghani on June 25, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol. Pelosi said that the meeting was in regards to humanitarian issues and financial aid. There was an obvious growing concern regarding the losses the Afghanistan army was taking. There was an urgent need of reassurance that the Afghanistan army could and would hold the Taliban off. Additionally, there were concerns of reports that suggested that the army was laying down arms and leaving their post.
We look forward to having a conversation about how we strengthen our relationship through humanitarian assistance. Our friendship is one that is deep and personal and one that we value. And again, this visit that you're making to the Capitol is an important one for both of our countries, certainly for us.
On August 15, 2021, the worst-case scenario starts to unfold for the Biden/Pelosi plan. The collapse of the U.S.-supported Afghan government on August 15 stunned the Pentagon and White House. Biden and Pelosi had multiple talks with President Ashraf Ghani. It appeared as if they were extremely concerned about the optics weeks before the collapse. However, their concern was to be hidden from the American public in private conversations with Ashraf Ghani. All of the reassurances and talks with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, as well as any promises from his advisors, were now void. Biden changing the withdrawal date and making the event his own has brought the unnecessary risk of American casualties, the likely loss of billions in weaponry, and the high probability of a return to oppressive rule over women as the Taliban take over. What was the contingency plan? It appears there was none.
As Afghanistan falls to Taliban control, the Biden administration stands by its plan to leave.
That is the hard decision the president made.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken insisting there's not much more the United States can do. Now conceding the Taliban's advances have been far faster than even he forecasted in June.
I don't think it's going to be something that happens from a Friday to a Monday.
Placing blame on the Afghan security forces.
Tragically, they have not been able to defend the country, and I think that explains why this has moved as quickly as it's moved.
Monica, are there any plans for President Biden to address the nation?
Not currently, at least not tonight, Peter. The White House weighing that day by day, with officials acknowledging the American people want to hear from him. For now, the president remains at Camp David, where he has been largely out of view since Friday.
This evening in Kabul, as you all know, terrorists attacked that we've been talking about and worried about, that the intelligence community has assessed, has undertaken an attack by a group known as ISIS-K. Took the lives of American service members standing guard at the airport and wounded several others seriously. We will not be deterred by terrorists. We will not let them stop our mission. We will continue the evacuation.
During Biden's response to the suicide bombing and the 13 American soldiers being killed, he was adamant that the United States would continue to withdraw troops and leave as soon as possible. Despite the attack, the withdrawal will continue, the president said. We will not be deterred by terrorists. We will not let them stop our mission. The question that has been circulating on the main streets of America is what exactly was the mission? Was the mission to flee? Was the mission to arm the Taliban with American weaponry? Was the mission to leave Afghanistan after 20 years and trillions of dollars having been spent just to replace the Taliban with an even stronger, better equipped, more emboldened Taliban? The real truth is dark, and it remains untold. Biden was determined to pull all American troops no matter the cost, and he referred to this truth as the mission. It will be his legacy event to claim that he ended the war no matter the cost, regardless of the immediate or future threat to the United States. The damage of the Biden/Pelosi plan has created a serious risk of danger to all Americans for years to come. It's questionable if Biden was sincerely concerned about the deaths of American soldiers in the least, other than the negative press he would get, of course. During the dignified transfer of American soldiers killed in Afghanistan, Joe Biden was seen glancing at his watch multiple times. Some say he looked at his watch a total of 13 times while each soldier was transferred.
My son was one of the Marines that died yesterday. 20 years and 6 months old, getting ready to come home from frickin' Jordan to be with his wife to watch the birth of his son. And that feckless, dementia-ridden piece of crap just sent my son to die. So my son is gone, and I just want all you Democrats who cheated in the election or who voted for him legitimately, you just killed my son. I just couldn't sit by idly because I think I need to just process through anger instead of tears. And so this is how I'm going to do it. Guess what? My son did die in vain. This was an unnecessary debacle that could have been handled properly. They had months and months to remove everyone from Afghanistan, and they chose not to.
My name is Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller, United States Marine Corps. I'm the current battalion commander for Advanced Infantry Training Battalion. I've been in the Marine Infantry for 17 years. Started my tour with Victor 1-8. It's the current unit that's doing perimeter security, dealing with the mess that's going on there. You can see open source reporting that there was an explosion and some people were killed. I know through my inside channels that one of those people that were killed was someone that I have a personal relationship with. We won't go into more details because the families are still being notified. What you believe in can only be defined by what you're willing to risk. So if I'm willing to risk my current battalion commander seat, my retirement, my family's stability to say some of the things that I want to say, I think it gives me some moral high ground to demand the same honesty, integrity, accountability from my senior leaders. And so people are upset because their senior leaders let them down, and none of them are raising their hands and accepting accountability or saying, we messed this up. If an 05 battalion commander has the simplest live fire incident EO complaint, boom, fired. But we have a Secretary of Defense that testified to Congress in May that the Afghan National Security Force could withstand the Taliban advance.
Although there were 13 American lives lost due to the Biden freeze of withdrawals from Afghanistan when he took office, his administration fails to take accountability for what he and Pelosi have done. The Biden administration is now pushing to turn the page on their premeditated plot and its disastrous results as quickly as possible. The White House has started using national weather events and COVID-19 once again as their main talking points regarding current national concerns, and of course, the mainstream media have followed the lead. The Biden announcement regarding the war in Afghanistan and its end was riddled with statements of how he's the one that got it done, how he succeeded where others had failed. As if the American people were completely unaware of the dubious plot that was started by Nancy Pelosi to hijack the Trump withdrawals from Afghanistan, change the withdrawal deadline for optics, and make it a Biden legacy event. As of September 3rd, there are hundreds of US citizens still trapped in Afghanistan, all of which have been left behind. We also know that Biden left behind billions of dollars in weapons and military equipment. $83 billion spent by the US on equipment and training over the last 2 decades is now in the hands of the Taliban. Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi owns this disaster, both equally guilty.
Last night in Kabul, the United States ended 20 years of war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history. We completed one of the biggest airlifts in history, with more than 120,000 people evacuated to safety. That number is more than double what most experts thought were possible. No nation has ever done anything like it in all of history. Only the United States had the capacity and the will and ability to do it, and we did it today. In April, I made a decision to end this war.
I want to thank the leader for doing what the Speaker of the House refuses to do, and that's to bring us here today to focus on doing everything that we can do as members of Congress to provide oversight and support to bring every single American home. That's my question today. Where is Nancy Pelosi? Why isn't she here? Each and every one of us changed our plans so that we could be here today, yesterday, and in the days to come to do everything that we can to safely bring every American home.
Speaker Pelosi is derelict in her duties. This government exists to preserve the rights of the American people. It exists to protect the rights of the American people from all foreign adversaries. Now, I will tell you, I don't know. I've thought long and hard about it as this has occurred, whether it's incompetence, whether it's neglect, or whether it's something worse. Can you imagine that? Whether it's something worse. That this was supposed to happen this way. Ladies and gentlemen, this is more than neglect. This is a betrayal. And so we demand action and we demand accountability right now. Yes. Right now. We're not waiting any longer. So while they're talking over here and while Speaker Pelosi's back in California telling you that she stands for women, little women and girls in Afghanistan, American girls in Afghanistan are being persecuted and worse as we speak.
There is yet another dark side of the Biden/Pelosi plot. One that reveals the disturbing truth about the sincerity of Pelosi and her past in regards to her so-called passion for protecting the rights of the women and girls of Afghanistan. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi issued a statement that began, "The president is to be commended for the clarity of purpose of his statement on Afghanistan and the actions he has taken." She then followed by saying, "We are deeply concerned about reports regarding the Taliban's brutal treatment of all Afghans, especially women and girls. The US, international community and the Afghan government must do everything we can to protect women and girls from inhumane treatment by the Taliban." It appears to be more political rhetoric or a play to the women voters in her base. It's important to note that Pelosi has had zero objections regarding any of the actions that Biden has taken in Afghanistan.
Many Afghan women, these images are a nightmare come true. As the Taliban make rapid gains, women's lives are at risk.
With the return of the Taliban to power, it's a place of desperation and fear.
Taliban are roaming here with their weapons. They are checking everywhere, their homes, their offices. Taliban are not okay with the female. It's very scary. You cannot guess our feeling right now. That's how we feel. We cannot move any place. So we are hopeless. We are just sitting in our home. The only weapon we have right now is our prayers. We are just praying, that's it. You know, the higher authorities left us all alone. The president, the ministers, everybody, the leaders, they all left us alone with the Taliban.
When the Islamist militants ruled the country between 1996 and 2001, they imposed a strict version of Islamic law. Women were forbidden to go out without a man by their sides, to work or to receive an education. Those accused of crimes such as adultery were whipped and stoned to death. In areas controlled by the group today, these rules have already been implemented. Many women are choosing to flee. Nearly 250,000 Afghans have fled their homes since the end of May. 80% of them are women and children.
It is particularly horrifying and heartbreaking to see reports of the hard-won rights of Afghan girls and women being ripped away from them.
In the first half of 2021, women and children accounted for almost half of the civilian casualties in the war.
Should the Biden administration have had a stronger U.S. military presence for the transition?
Well, first may I just say that I commend the president for the action that he took. It was strong, it was decisive, and it was the right thing to do. We should have been out of Afghanistan a while back. What I had said was that really it's time. We should have been out of Afghanistan a while back.
And I think Richard had said something like, well, women are being abused there. I said, they're being abused a lot of places around the world. Are we going to send our American forces all over the world and make sure that stops?
But then don't you bear some responsibility for the outcome if the Taliban ends up back in control and women end up losing the rights?
No, I don't. Look, are you telling me that we should go into China go to war with China because what they're doing to the Uyghurs, 1 million Uyghurs out in the West in concentration camps? Is that what you're saying to me?
It was your quote, sir. I was asking you.
No, I know. I gave the answer. Do I bear responsibility? Zero responsibility.
It's clear to those that are willing to accept the truth as it is. The United States government is being led by individuals that are grandiose narcissists. They have used their positions of leadership within the government to pursue their own interests at the expense of the collective. It's time for American citizens from every political party to come together to bring integrity and honor back to the United States. Young Americans should stand together as one and as the only future of this once great nation. Together they could finally cast out the morally diseased elders that have infected the halls of Washington, D.C. with corruption for far too long.